For years, the world believed Joe Low was a ghost, vanishing on yachts, slipping to secret islands, his $4.5 billion gone. But the official story missed the truth. He is hiding in plain sight, shielded by powerful allies who treat him as a geopolitical asset, not a criminal. Every government knows where he is. The real question is why no one has dared to take him. This is how one man's freedom became the world's most lucrative standoff. The numbers were staggering from the start. $4.5 billion siphoned out of Malaysia's sovereign wealth fund, money meant for hospitals, roads and schools, vanished into a maze of offshore accounts and shell companies. Joe Low, a baby-faced financier from Penang, became the architect behind the world's largest financial heist. He did not just steal, he transformed theft into spectacle. The Department of Justice filings read like a billionaire's fantasy. $250 million for a super yacht, Picassos and Monets bought at auction, diamonds for movie stars, and penthouses in New York and London. Low's parties set new records for excess. In Las Vegas, champagne showers rained down on A-list celebrities. Leonardo DiCaprio, Miranda Kerr, Jamie Foxx, each drawn into his orbit by the promise of bottomless luxury. The Wolf of Wall Street was not just a film he funded, it was a blueprint for his own life. He handed out chips at casinos like candy, dropped millions on gambling tables, and once gifted a $3.2 million painting to DiCaprio as a casual thank you. The media could not get enough. Paparazzi shots showed Low flanked by celebrities on yachts that seemed to materialize in Monaco one week, Saint-Tropez the next. He was rumored to have bought a penthouse overlooking Central Park for $30 million, then topped it off with a private jet. News outlets described him as a mysterious playboy with an endless supply of cash, always one step ahead of the law. But behind the velvet ropes and red carpets, the damage was real. By 2018, one MDB's debts had ballooned to $12 billion, sending shockwaves through Malaysia's economy. The US Department of Justice began seizing assets, yachts, mansions, and artwork, totaling over $1 billion. Each new forfeiture filing peeled back another layer of the scheme: fake joint ventures, forged documents, and a global network of bankers and fixers. As the headlines grew louder, so did the rumors. Some claimed Low was hiding out on his yacht in the South China Sea. Others said he had slipped into Myanmar or the Middle East. The world watched as the story drifted from Wall Street to Hollywood, from Kuala Lumpur to Monaco, always with Low at the center, a man whose public persona was as carefully engineered as the shell companies he used to move billions. The myth of the untouchable fugitive took hold, fueled by every new sighting and every unanswered question about where all that money and Joe Low himself had gone. Stories of Joe Low's vanishing act became currency in the global press. Every few months, a new rumor surfaced: Low glimpsed on a yacht off Phuket, or seen slipping through the casinos of Macau. Tabloids painted him as a billionaire phantom, flitting from one tax haven to another, always just out of reach. The legend grew with each unverified sighting. He was supposedly living it up in Myanmar, or hiding under layers of disguise in the Middle East. Even Interpol's Red Notice, issued in 2016, did little to slow the myth-making. If anything, the scarcity of facts made the chase more intoxicating. The truth is, most of these stories came from recycled tips, second-hand whispers, or anonymous sources with something to gain. Headlines breathlessly described Low as a master of disguise, a man with a bottomless Rolodex of forged passports and private jets. Yet for every tale of a midnight escape on a super yacht, there was a conspicuous lack of hard evidence. The supposed sightings in Monaco or Dubai rarely included dates, photos, or names. Newsrooms ran with whatever scraps they could find, often citing each other as proof. Social media only amplified the fog. Posts claimed Low was spotted at luxury resorts, but no images ever surfaced. Even seasoned reporters struggled to separate fact from fantasy. The more outlandish the rumor, the faster it spread. He became a character in his own heist movie, untouchable, always one step ahead, a ghost haunting the world's most expensive playgrounds. But the constant recycling of the same yacht and casino folklore started to wear thin. Investigative journalists began to push back, questioning the reliability of the so-called sources and the lack of verifiable detail. A new approach took hold. Stop chasing shadows and start demanding receipts. Every claim would need a timestamp, a location, a second source. If a tip could not be corroborated, it was labeled low confidence or rumor. No more free passes for stories with no paper trail. This new standard did not just change the reporting, it changed the entire narrative. The image of Joe Low as an international man of mystery began to crack. The focus shifted from the myth to the evidence. The question was no longer where could he be, but what do we actually know? The chase for Joe Low was about to get a lot more real and a lot less glamorous. By late 2019, the myth of Joe Low's globe trotting began to unravel under closer scrutiny. Patterns in timelines collected by investigative reporters revealed a trail that pointed not to constant motion, but to two cities, Macau and Shanghai. The first credible reports placed Low in Macau, living in a villa on Penna Hill, a district known for its ties to Chinese political elites. The Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, working off tips from Al Jazeera's 2023 investigation, suspected he was using a safe house owned by a senior Communist Party member. Yet these Macau claims soon faded as a new set of whispers gained traction further north. Between 2020 and 2023, journalists began receiving repeated tips placing Low in Shanghai's Pudong district. The details were always similar: a gated community called Green Hills, lined with English-style mansions and patrolled by security teams who kept out strangers and prying eyes. Property agents described the enclave as a playground for China's ultra-rich, with Teslas and Jaguars parked outside sprawling bungalows. Residents, when pressed by visiting reporters from the Straits Times, admitted to knowing of famous businessmen in the area, but claimed no knowledge of Low himself. Still, the pattern was hard to ignore. Each new tip matched the last: same compound, same luxury cars, same silence from the authorities. A single photo, allegedly taken at Shanghai Disneyland on Christmas Eve 2019, added fuel to the story. The image circulated quietly among journalists and was said to show Low in the park's holiday crowds. Forensic experts pored over the metadata, confirming the date and location, but the man's identity remained unverified. No official records turned up, no CCTV footage, no hotel logs. There was only a string of anonymous sources and a mounting sense that Low was living less like a fugitive and more like a sanctioned guest. By 2025, the Shanghai theory had become the anchor for most serious investigations. Bradley Hope and Tom Wright, authors of Billion Dollar Whale, went public with claims that Low was living openly in Green Hills, shielded by Chinese security and operating under the name Konstantinos Achilles Vase. Despite official denials from Beijing and skepticism from Malaysian authorities, the evidence trail pointed to a simple truth. Zhou Lu's world had shrunk from the open waters of Macau to the manicured lawns of Pudong. The myth of the ghost gave way to the reality of a man hiding in plain sight of a surveillance state. Aliases are the currency of a fugitive's survival, and Zhou Lu never relied on just one name. By the time the world's law enforcement agencies were closing in, he was already traveling under a different identity, Konstantinos Achilles Vase. That name, printed on a forged Australian passport, became his shield against border checks and red notices. It was not the first time Lo had slipped through the cracks using a new persona, but this alias would prove more persistent than most. The strongest clue did not come from a government database or an intelligence leak. It arrived as a single image, a blurry photo circulated among journalists that was said to show Lo at Shanghai Disneyland on December 24, 2019. The man in the picture wore a baseball cap and blended into the crowds, but the metadata embedded in the file told a sharper story. Forensic analysts extracted the timestamp, 6:43 p.m. on Christmas Eve, and GPS coordinates matching the park entrance plaza. The camera model, a Huawei P30 Pro, was common enough, but the digital footprint was precise. No sign of manipulation, no evidence of Photoshop. The photo origin traced back to a Chinese messaging app, the sender listed only as Achilles. Investigators did not stop there. They cross-referenced the image with public records of park attendance, holiday event schedules, and crowd photos posted to Weibo that night. In several wide shots, a man matching Lo's build and posture appeared in the background, always flanked by two men in plain clothes. The pattern fit earlier witness tips. Lo moving freely, but never alone. His bodyguards acting less like private security and more like official minders. Digital analysts mapped the timeline. The Disneyland photo placed Lo in Shanghai just as rumors were placing him in Macau. The forged passport, meanwhile, surfaced in leaked hotel check-in logs from the Pudong district, again under the name Konstantinos Achilles Vase, with a December 2019 entry. Each piece of evidence was circumstantial, yet together they formed a toolkit for verification. Alias, image, timestamp, and metadata were the new fingerprints in a world where the old ones no longer mattered. Forensic certainty doesn't come from rumors or anonymous tips. It is built on data, timestamps, geolocation, and a chain of custody that can survive the scrutiny of a hostile courtroom. Every claim about Zhou Lu's whereabouts had to pass through a gauntlet of open-source intelligence tools and digital forensics labs before it could be considered credible. Investigators started with the raw evidence. A smartphone photo said to show Lo at Shanghai Disneyland on December 24, 2019. The file's EXYF data was extracted and passed by independent analysts, confirming not just the date and time, 6:43 p.m. on Christmas Eve, but the precise GPS coordinates inside the park's entrance plaza. The device, a Huawei P30 Pro, left a digital signature that matched the phone's serial number, eliminating the possibility of basic Photoshop manipulation. But a single photo, no matter how clean its metadata, wasn't enough. Analysts layered in public records and crowdsourced imagery from the same night. They mapped the park's event schedule, compared crowd sizes, and sifted through Weibo posts for matching faces and clothing. In several wide shots, a man with the Lo's build appeared, always trailed by two plainclothes men. The pattern matched earlier descriptions from witness tips, never alone, always shadowed by security, who looked more like government minders than private bodyguards. The verification toolkit extended beyond digital evidence. Open-source intelligence platforms like Google Earth and Baidu Maps provided satellite overlays of Shanghai's Green Hills compound, tracking changes in vehicle patterns and property renovations over time. Investigators cross-referenced these with asset lists from the US Department of Justice forfeiture filings, which detailed the luxury cars, real estate, and art once tied to Lowe's network. Each new data point was logged, time-stamped, and checked against public records. Hotel check-ins under the alias Konstantinos Achilles Vase, property records in Pudong, and even school enrollment rosters from nearby international academies. Every step was documented. Every piece of evidence passed through at least 2 independent labs before it was added to the timeline. The standard was simple. If it couldn't be verified, it didn't make the cut. In a world where the myth of Zhou Luo thrived on shadows and speculation, only the facts that survived this toolkit of verification would shape the next phase of the investigation. Official requests for Zhou Luo's extradition were met with silence or polite denials. In 2023, Malaysian authorities renewed their pursuit, sending formal letters to Beijing and raising the issue at regional summits. Each time, the reply was the same: no confirmation, no cooperation, no sign that Luo was even in the country. The diplomatic freeze set in as Malaysia's new government tried to renegotiate the East Coast Rail Link, a $10 billion Belt and Road project with China Communications Construction Company. Public statements from both sides grew more cautious. Chinese officials insisted on the sanctity of their legal process. Malaysian ministers, under pressure from the public and opposition, hinted that certain unresolved issues were stalling progress, not just on the rail deal, but on the question of Zhou Luo's return. By 2024, the pattern was clear. Each time Malaysia pressed for extradition, talks on infrastructure would slow. Each time a new round of negotiations opened on the East Coast Rail Link, the subject of Luo's whereabouts would quietly disappear from the agenda. The standoff dragged on through 2025. Official communiques referenced ongoing cooperation and mutual understanding, but nothing changed. The calculus on both sides was obvious. For Malaysia, the political cost of failure was rising. For China, the leverage was too valuable to surrender. The man at the center of it all remained out of reach. His name, a bargaining chip in a game played far above the level of police or prosecutors. Inside Shanghai's Green Hills compound, the world shrinks to a handful of streets. The mansions are draped in old-world luxury, but the freedom is only surface deep. Zhou Luo's days reportedly pass within a tight perimeter, never far from the guarded gates, never out of sight. Residents whisper about a famous foreigner who keeps to himself, moving between his home and a discreet office in the financial district, always accompanied by men who look more like handlers than friends. He has access to everything money can buy, including imported cars, private chefs, river views, and the illusion of normalcy. Yet every movement is watched, every visitor logged. The compound security teams are rumored to answer not to residents, but to higher authorities. Luo's world is a gilded cage, polished and silent with invisible bars. Reports from investigative journalists suggest that this luxury comes at a steep price. Protection is not free. Sources allege regular payments, protection fees paid to the very system that shields him from international arrest. There are no receipts and no bank records in the public domain. The persistent claim is that staying untouchable in China's surveillance state requires constant tribute. Irony is sharp. The man who once bought jet-setting freedom with stolen billions now lives in a fortress he cannot leave. The parties and private jets are gone. In their place, a daily routine measured in meters, not miles, and a constant reminder that safety bought from the powerful is never truly secure. Joe Lo's location is an open secret, a symbol of how power can shield, not expose. As long as global politics outweigh justice, stolen billions remain bargaining chips, not restitution. The world watches, but accountability waits in limbo. In an age of surveillance, vanishing is impossible unless the world agrees to look away. Drop your thoughts below. Does justice stand a chance against realpolitik?